So here's a picture from Spiel, like the Germans call it. Spiel, this is the yearly convention that takes place in Essen, Germany every year. And this is like the mecca of tabletop gaming. If anybody has anything to do with tabletop, this is their mecca. This is the place they would want to be, at least once in their lifetime. So as we see, like every year this place attracts thousands of people, but the number has been increasing tremendously over the years. And this is a proof that things are doing really well. Like the present scenario is just like the ending of a Rajshri Productions movie. Everything is perfect. So what exactly is the problem we are addressing to? Yes, they are making a comeback and it's huge. And the purchases, they rise by the rate of 25 to 40% every year. And if a game manages to bag awards like Spiel des Jahres or the Board Game Geek Award, they manage to sell millions of copies. Still everything looks nice, so where is the problem? Dragons are everywhere. And this is a rather cute looking dragon, so I'll just replace it with something more monstrous. Yeah, this will do the job. So meet the dragons of tabletop gaming industry. Patents, copyrights, and lawsuits. Let me take you to the darkest day in the history of tabletop games. This was in 1997 when the Wizards of the Coast, I hope you guys know about it. Wizards of the Coast is the publisher of Dungeons and Dragons, which is the most played board game, role-playing board game. And so in October 1997, they managed to get the patent. And you'll be amazed on what they got the patent. They patented the tapping mechanic, like touching a game in the very famous game Magic the Gathering. To indicate that a card is depleted, you tap the card. They patented the mechanic. Like, if you want to use this mechanic in any of the games that you design, you'll have to probably pay a royalty to these guys. That was at least what was expected, but what turned out to be was nobody turned to them. Nobody ever went to them to get the royalty, to pay the royalty, to get the rights. Instead, what people did was they changed the name of the mechanic. From tapping to exhausting, spitting, burning, they tried everything. And from tapping to maybe holding your nose and tapping through the side or just flicking the card, they tried everything, but nobody ever went to them to pay them money. But that's all right. Maybe this particular time they were not able to get a lot of attention, but this was just the start. This was a heads up of what was waiting for us in the industry later. But did we actually learn anything from this? So how many of you sitting here right now have been a part of a theme party or have probably hosted one recently? All right. So actually, what is the theme? Can you please tell us? All right. So maybe people would have dressed like in different cosplay costumes as well. And that violated copyright, and you and I deserve to be in a prison right now. No, we are playing on our chances here. So this is what I really want to point at. We are playing at our chances, and the world is very cruel. Like this guy. So what he did, he's a citizen of the US, and he threw a party at his residence and invited a few friends and family. And everything was in a good faith. He just wanted to have a good time with his friends. But what it turned into was really horrific. So this guy had put up a very cute looking poster on Facebook inviting friends for the party, and this caught the attention of Nintendo, and he was slapped with a notice of $4,000. This is the price that he had to pay for one theme party. So next time when you do that, so do we see any solution to this problem? Can open source come to our rescue here? Because open source movement is something that every other industry is taking a bolster of, and it's working pretty well for them. here is the wall of patents at the Palo Alto headquarters of Tesla. Tesla, I'm sure many of you would be aware of. They are making the new autonomous car along with Apple. So this is their wall of patents. This is their hard-earned patents that people at Tesla have worked over the years and have earned this. They gave away all the patents to the open source movement, each and every one of them. And Elon Musk, the guy who inspired the character of Tony Stark, he made a statement that whoever wants to use them in good faith to develop something is free to do that, and no lawsuits would be pressed against them, which is really amazing. And he is a guy with vision, as we all know. So the deal is you cannot just lay a bed of thorns of patents and copyrights on a path on which you want people to follow you. I have no idea how that really works out for people, but that is not actually how it is done. And now let me explain this entire thing in terms of a more practical scenario for us guys. Like we start companies with just a handful of people managing it, like say 5, 6, or maybe in some cases 2 to 3. Could we afford to do such a thing? Could we afford to pull such a stunt and like survive in this industry? So this is a case study of Card Against Humanity. It's a very famous party card game, and many of us would have played it in some party somewhere. So how did they started off? So they were obviously funded by Kickstarter, and they have released their entire game under the Creative Commons license. And the full license is CC by NC-SA, where BY stands for attribution, NC non-commercial, and SA is share alike. So this particular license, it will allow you to make changes to the work, but it will not allow you to make any commercial benefit out of it. So as we can see, nobody is probably going to harm their business in this way, because if I am downloading a copy of Cards Against Humanity, if I make changes to it, I cannot sell it off. I'll have to share it the same way those guys shared it online, and this is not going to affect their business in any way. And like one of their designers had put across, nobody had ever heard of us, so making the entire game available for free was a great marketing tool. Even if someone downloaded the game instead of pledging to our project, they would probably play with some friends who might pledge. They cashed in on this, they gambled on this thought, and it turned out to be perfect for them. I'll show you how. This is their new office in Chicago, and look how cool is that. So, Creative Commons license for games is not a very new idea. Something called Open Gaming Foundation was started long back when Wizards of the Coast was to release the 3rd edition of Dungeons and Dragons. So Dungeons and Dragons as a whole, they were facing a problem that even though 1.5 million of players were playing it, only around 100,000 copies of the rules were sold every month, and that was way too less for their business to prosper. So they came up with this Open Gaming Foundation, and I'll explain in some time how they resorted to this marketing tool. But this is the license under which the D20 system of Dungeons and Dragons was released. But it also happened to attract a lot of controversies, and this stained the image of the open source movement. So here's the guy. Here's the hero who started off with the idea. He was the ex-vice president in WATC, Wizards of the Craft, when the 3rd edition of Dungeons and Dragons was to be released. So he had the responsibility on his shoulder that he wanted to make it all work. He had to do that. There was no other way out for him. So he came up with this, he actually didn't come up, he came across a theory, and the theory is called the theory of network externality. I've probably not mentioned it anywhere here, but that is the theory through which he figured out that the quality of the game is not always what makes it valuable. It's the network that does. And especially with a role-playing game, if you have a tremendous network, then nothing on this planet could beat you down. Nobody could put you on a second place. So that's how he started the Open Gaming Foundation, because he wanted to release the new rule set. There was no new game released in the 3rd edition. It was just a new rule set, the D20 system. So just to release that content online in free license, in open license, they started off with the Open Gaming Foundation. And in the Open Gaming Foundation, the license that they used was Open Gaming License. But the most oxymoronic part of this entire thing is the Open Gaming License is copyrighted. Yeah, and WOTC holds the right to change the clauses of the license anytime they want. So even if I use the license to release my product, and one fine day they decide to change the clauses of the license, I would not be affected. But I'm not convinced, there has to be some stability, and you have to have a feeling that, okay, if I'm relying on this system or this licensing system, it has to be stable. But these guys, after they had released the 3rd edition of D&D, they never cared to update the website. It's still not updated. If you go back to the Open Game Foundation website, it still says last updated 2003. But at least he managed to, he had the balls to come up with the idea of releasing games under the open license for whatever reason, personal reasons he had. So what exactly is an open source game? An open source game is a game that is created from scratch, which is available for modifications, additions, and tweaks, and a substantial portion of those tweaks could become a part of the core game itself. And still the older version would be available to whoever wants to use it. That's just the definition of the open source game. And then comes the Creative Commons license. Now to understand the Creative Commons license, I think we'll have to first understand the copyright system here. So the copyright system says that even if I don't approach someone to get a copyright for my artwork, it applies on art, music, performance, academic work, communication. A copyright is automatically registered on that name. And if somebody wants to use it for something, they're unknowingly probably infringing the law or violating some copyright, and they're more likely to end up in jail if somebody notices it. So is this the system we want to really follow? Because aren't games supposed to be fun? Are we not supposed to be carefree while playing games, while coming up with new games? Because open source is what all the games have been by nature since ages. If we see games like chess, chop art, and all those snakes and ladders surviving the test of time, it's probably because they were always open source. They allowed people to make additions to them, to play, enjoy, and yet keep adding to them. And it was not fixed at any point of time. We forget that in the name of safeguarding inventions, what you call inventions, we are strangling innovation. We're leaving no room for innovation. Maybe if we make some fancy spoons one fine day, somebody could build a rocket with the same. I mean, everything is possible, but we want to put a full stop of, nobody could take forward our idea. But if it could really develop into something better, I don't think that is the attitude we should carry. And just imagine we talk about autonomous cars, we drive fancy cars on roads nowadays. What if the design of the wheel was patented and copyrighted when it was invented? Nothing would have been possible. Things are always built upon. We live in a community. We are bound to give something back to the community. I mean, let's not talk about charity right now. We all need money. But who's stopping you from making money? In fact, in this way, your artwork is likely to stay alive for ages. Now we'll come down to the kinds of Creative Commons licenses available. So we all have our own apprehensions when it comes to licensing. We don't want people to exploit us. We don't want to lose. Everybody wants to make money and survive. So there are the 6 kinds of licenses which are available. It starts from giving just attribution, like you will find this license being used for many images online, which you could download for free. But attribution is something that's a moral responsibility that you get if somebody is giving you something. But in OGL, in open gaming license, if you happen to skip the attribution, you could still be imprisoned. But that is not the case with the Creative Commons license. And the other thing is, you can state that you don't want any derivatives of your product, and you don't want people to use your product commercially. You want your business to sustain. So you have been provided with all the options. Now, this is not the only way that the open source movement could help a game sustain for a longer time. Most often what happens is when we give up a game for localization to some agency, we pay for them. We pay heavily for the localization of any game. But the result that comes out is not always what is desired. And instead, what we could do is we could just release one part of the game under the CC license or any other open license, and the fans will do the work, because the fans do amazing work. You have to look at some Russian websites which have fan versions of the very famous board games like Puerto Rico, and they prove to be even better than the original game, and people prefer the fan versions over the original versions. And this is in some way affecting the business of the original game. This is not something you would want for your game. So instead, take a different route. Take the good additions and add them to the core game of the core board of your game. Make it available to the public. Okay. So even in the case of Cards Against Humanity, it has jokes, it has humor, and humor, as we know, is very subjective. Maybe there are things that you would die laughing at, and there are some people, they won't even raise their brows on those jokes. So, and especially when it comes to cultural boundaries and regional boundaries, jokes lose their relevance. So maybe the CH cards which are made for the US, I don't think they hold any value for people living in Russia. So this license gives people the liberty to localize games as well. And they localize and put it up online. And the new localized game could be used by the company for commercial purpose, and it helps everyone. It is making a game which was created keeping one kind of audience in mind. It is making it reach out the world for free. What could be better than this? So that is all I have for now. Any questions?
Finished on time.
I did.
Oops, no. Okay, so we are at the end of the conference. We have about 6 minutes more. If anybody has questions for Veethika, she's available right here. Or you guys could just play board games together. Anyway, it's been a great conference. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Veethika, for taking the last session.